I'm Katie Couric. Tonight, the Secretary of the Army is out, another casualty of the Walter Reed scandal. And President Bush promises an investigation of conditions at military hospitals everywhere.
It is unacceptable to our country, and it's not going to continue.
Also tonight, that monster storm blows out to sea, but look what it left behind. Death and destruction across the South. We'll have the latest. Horror on the highway. A bus carrying a college baseball team crashes off an overpass, killing 6.
This is going to be with us forever.
How did it happen? And how safe is that cough medicine you give your kids? The FDA is investigating.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Hello, everyone. Major developments tonight in the Walter Reed story. Firing the general in charge of the Army hospital did not end the national outcry over the shoddy conditions there. Not after the Secretary of the Army replaced that general with another one who was just as deeply involved in the scandal. The outcry just got louder today, and tonight the Secretary of the Army got the boot. We begin at the Pentagon with correspondent David Martin.
Fed up with what he considered the Army's indifferent reaction to the scandal over the treatment of wounded soldiers at Walter Reed, Defense Secretary Gates demanded and got the resignation of the Secretary of the Army. Then he publicly read the Army the Riot Act.
I am disappointed that some in the Army have not adequately appreciated the seriousness of the situation pertaining to outpatient care at Walter Reed. Some have shown too much defensiveness and have not shown enough focus on digging into and addressing the problems.
Gates' swift sword was immediately cheered by veterans organizations.
We've seen massive and catastrophic leadership failures, and it's good to see people being held accountable. And I think it should also illustrate to people that this is a problem that extends beyond Walter Reed.
Earlier in the week, Gates had virtually ordered Army Secretary Francis Harvey to fire the commander at Walter Reed, Major General George Waitman. Harvey did as he was told, but then angered Gates by replacing Waitman with Army Surgeon General Kevin Kiley, who tried to downplay the severity of the problems at Walter Reed.
While we had some issues here, this is not a horrific, catastrophic failure at Walter Reed.
Kiley commanded Walter Reed earlier in the war, and according to Steve Robinson of Veterans for America, was part of the problem.
He was in charge, and he should have been aware of what was there.
Late today, Kiley's appointment to head Walter Reed was canceled and a new commander named. In other words, Katie, Gates has both overruled the Army and fired its leader, a stunning vote of no confidence.
And David, I understand hearings are scheduled Monday on Capitol Hill and at Walter Reed with officials and wounded soldiers, and that there's a document that could be very damaging.
That's right. One committee has unearthed an internal memo from last year in which the deputy commander of Walter Reed complains about staff cuts and then warns patient care services are at risk of mission failure. Now, that would seem to say Army leaders knew something was wrong and failed to fix it.
David Martin reporting from the Pentagon tonight. In his weekly radio address tomorrow, President Bush will say he's naming a bipartisan commission to look into conditions at all of America's military and veterans hospitals. He says the situation at Walter Reed is unacceptable, and he vows it is not going to continue. So over to the White House now. Jim Axelrod, you've learned the president is very angry about all of this.
That's right, Katie. A former Pentagon official close to the situation says the president's so angry, quote, his hair is on fire. Mr. Bush learned about the resignation of the Secretary of the Army this morning at 8:35 in the White House Situation Room. He was told by Secretary Gates. On the day the story broke, he told Gates to, quote, fix it. But the decision to fire the Secretary of the Army was apparently made by Gates, not the president. Still, Katie, the White House is well aware of the PR nightmare that it faces. The last thing this administration can afford is another Katrina. Katie?
Jim Axelrod. Jim, thank you. Now to the storm system that battered the South with more than 24 tornadoes. It is gone tonight, but it won't soon be forgotten. When the sun came up today, we got our first good look at what the twisters had done, ripping open buildings in 5 states, killing 1 person in Missouri, 9 in Georgia, 10 in Alabama, most of them students at a high school in the town of Enterprise. Mark Strassman is there, but we begin with Sharon Alfonsi in Newton, Georgia. And Sharon, it's absolutely heartbreaking there.
It really is, Katie, and believe it or not, this is actually one of the homes that fared well in this neighborhood. You can still tell it was a home. For others, you need a whole lot of imagination.
If it looks like Mother Nature erased an entire neighborhood, it's because she did.
My first son and his family was just wiped off.
Richard McFarland lost a son and granddaughter at a mobile home community that had no warning and nowhere to run. One little boy was trapped outside.
But the wind was so strong till he couldn't get in. They picked him up and killed him.
All that from just one tornado. There were 33 others, stretching from Illinois to Georgia, part of a violent storm system that took at least 20 lives.
And as it swept to the east, it spawned several of these supercells. These are massive thunderstorm complexes that drop tornadoes sometimes.
The same system that spawned killer tornadoes in Alabama yesterday reached into southern Georgia overnight, killing 2 at a hospital, then rumbling down this country road, taking 6 more lives.
But when it got here, it was rough. It was absolutely hard.
Because there are no sirens here, Flossie Anderson tried to warn her neighbors as fast as her fingers could dial.
We started calling people and waking them up and alert them to get up, There's a tornado headed this way.
It didn't help everyone. 6 of her cousins were killed, including the baby of the family.
What was she like?
Very good, very sweet, very good and everything.
And President Bush plans to visit this area tomorrow. In just this neighborhood, 6 people were killed within about 300 feet of each other. Katie?
So sad. Sharon Alfonsi. Sharon, thank you. And just 100 miles west of Newton, Georgia, families in Enterprise, Alabama are asking today whether high school officials were right to keep the kids inside with a twister bearing down on them. Mark Strassman is there. Mark, did the people there have any warning?
Katie, actually, Enterprise High had 18 minutes warning that the tornado was on its way, which is 5 minutes more than the national average. So the school was ready. The building wasn't.
All right.
In Enterprise on the day after, the loss is still unimaginable. 8 high school students cowering in a hallway were killed. Mikey Tompkins was one of them, a baseball pitcher, a jokester, and Kimberly Tompkins' kid brother.
My parents met in that high school, and my brother died in that high school. We have so many good memories, bad memories.
Their father, deployed in Iraq, now heads home to bury his youngest child.
I was the one that told my dad that my brother didn't make it.
What lingers with the rubble are the questions. As the tornado approached, did the school do enough?
10:30 yesterday morning was the first tornado warning, and many students went home. At 1:15, a second warning. And then 15 minutes later, disaster. The 150-mile-an-hour winds that chopped these trees made a direct hit on the school.
The 8 students died in what was supposed to be the school's safe place. Officials insist they did the right thing, the only thing they could.
We all knew the plan. We all followed the plan. The plan was the best it could be. We kept as many kids safe as we possibly could. This is an act of God.
Mikey Tompkins was planning his prom. Instead, his family is planning his funeral.
I just thought if something was going to happen, it would be to my dad overseas, not here at home to my little brother who hasn't done anything.
The surrounding neighborhoods here look just as battered as this high school. And so for the foreseeable future, Katie, dozens of people here will be living in shelters.
Okay, Mark Strassman. Mark, thank you. Meanwhile, there was another tragedy in the South today. A chartered bus carrying the baseball team from Bluffton University in Ohio down to Florida crashed off a highway overpass and onto I-75 in Atlanta. 4 players, the bus driver and his wife, were killed. Dozens of others were hurt. Randall Pinkston reports it happened on a very tricky section of highway.
Throughout the morning, emergency workers pulled the injured and the dead from the twisted wreckage.
18-year-old A.J. Ramtham is one of 29 survivors. His brother was hurt too.
This is something that's not going to leave the guys who were on that bus this morning. This is going to be with us forever.
As the charter bus traveled southbound on I-75, the driver took the HOV exit onto Northside Drive, apparently thinking he was still on the interstate. Atlanta police say he continued on the exit ramp at highway speeds, reaching Northside Drive where he veered right across all 7 lanes of traffic, crashing through a 2-foot barrier and a fence. The bus plunged 24 feet back onto I-75. The baseball team came from a small Mennonite college in Ohio, where today everyone struggled to cope with the news.
All of our students are faculty and staff. We know these people on a first-name basis, and that makes it all the more real.
I just wish there was something I could do to the families who lost their loved ones.
Just last night here on campus, there was a service to pray for a safe journey for the team. Tonight, families of the victims are preparing to bring their bodies home. Randall Pinkston, CBS News, Bluffton, Ohio.
And we've got much more CBS News ahead. Coming up next, remembering an American hero, wife, mother, grandmother, and soldier. And later, we give them to our children. Now the government is asking, are those over-the-counter cough and cold medicines safe or effective? CBS News in focus. Tonight, the sacrifices made by American servicemen and women. 2 more American soldiers were killed by a roadside bomb outside Baghdad today. The U.S. death toll in Iraq is now at least 3,166, and that includes 71 women. Cynthia Bowers has the story of an American hero who was known as the consummate soldier.
In both life and death, Marilyn Gabbard was a first, the highest-ranking enlisted woman in the history of the Iowa National Guard. She was also the first woman from there to die in combat. But to her family and the thousands who packed a memorial service in her high school gym, the 46-year-old was also a wife, mother, and grandmother.
What about her makes you the most proud?
Wow. Everything about her was pride. I mean, my family loved her. The Guard loved her.
Marilyn was in country, as they say, only 26 days, but she had already started movie night, a way to help officers and enlisted get to know each other.
Do you think there is any replacing her?
You really can't. I've just never quite met anybody that totally gave of themselves and really just didn't want any recognition for it.
Ed and Marilyn met in the Guard and for 18 years were inseparable. Even her deployment couldn't keep them apart. Despite the 9 hours time difference, they talked twice a day. But she woke him up only once, Saturday, January 20th.
Called me at 2:30. Said I'm getting ready to board the helicopter. We're heading back to base. And said, I'll call you when I get back. She never called. And the next morning at 8 o'clock, the news stated that there was a Black Hawk that went down on Saturday, and all 12 people were dead. And I knew it was Marilyn. I knew she was on that helicopter.
Ed, a lot of people say they love their spouses, but not a lot of people are able to say they were soulmates. How big a hole does this leave?
A big one. I was asked when I think life will get back to normal. It never will. Not without her. Never, ever.
Even so, come spring, he vows he'll put the top down on Marilyn's beloved Mustang and take grandson Benjamin for a spin. But first, he has to find the right words to tell the 4-year-old that his hero grandma is not coming home. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Polk City, Iowa.
This is such a sad newscast. Coming up next, if your children have a cough or cold, is it safe to give them over-the-counter medicine, and do they even work? Why the government is trying to find out. The FDA has decided to take its first look ever at all those cough and cold medicines we give our children. By the age of 2, the average toddler has had as many as 10 colds. Many parents treat them with over-the-counter drugs, even though doctors say they don't work, can cause serious health problems, and have never actually been tested on children. Here's our resident doctor, John LaPook.
Oh, bless you. Oh, bless you.
When a child is sick, all you want to do is make it better.
Oh, it's okay.
I've given cough medicine to my 5-year-old a few times, and I'm not sure how effective it was, but I do think it's helped.
Not necessarily. Pressured by pediatricians and public health officials, the FDA is reviewing the effectiveness and the safety of popular cold and cough remedies for children under 6.
We've asked the FDA to, number one, make a clear statement to the public that these products have not been shown to be safe and effective for young children, and to advise parents not to give them to young children.
The CDC looked at hospital emergency room records nationwide from 2004 to 2005. They found that more than 1,500 children under age 2 suffered serious health problems from taking these medications.
You got a cold?
Pediatricians say when used as directed, these drugs are usually safe, but accidental overdoses can occur. Complications can include high blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, and over-sedation. Critics say the benefits are not worth the risk.
They don't reduce symptoms significantly. They don't make it easier on the family. They don't make it easier on the child. Given that, it doesn't make sense to tolerate any real risk of serious side effects.
Many people may not realize that the recommended children's doses of these medicines are actually based on studies done in adults and then estimated for kids.
So bottom line, John, what are parents supposed to do?
Well, the FDA said they're going to be looking into this over the next few months, to stay tuned. But for now, they say, look, follow the directions on the packaging, and specifically, remember, don't give these types of medicines to kids under 2 without first checking with your doctor.
All right, John LaPook, thank you. Coming up next, all hands on deck. We'll sit in on what just may be the longest running card game in tonight's Assignment America. Well, it's Friday night, thank goodness. The week's over. How about playing some cards with the guys? Steve Hartman will deal you in tonight's Assignment America from Milwaukee.
Hey there, buddy. Good to see you.
There's Pete and Roger, Frank and Richard,
Hi, Charlie.
Charlie, Dick, and Joe.
That's it now. Yeah, look who's talking.
All together again for another afternoon of unbridled laughs. These guys have been getting together for cards since who knows when. Seriously, who knows when?
We started in 1951. It's either 51 or 52. 53, somewhere in there. We just went on and on and on and on and on.
Oh. They play sheep's head, which is kind of like euchre if you know that game. If not, don't worry. They say this isn't really about cards anyway.
Hey. I don't think the game is important. Cards was just an excuse to see each other. That was the glue that kept us together. They're the best friends I have.
What about your wife?
My wife doesn't play cards.
No. The guys first met in college, and over the years, they've stood up at each other's weddings and been godparents to each other's children. They've mourned the loss of 2 spouses and celebrated the births of 32 grandchildren. And because they have been through so much, they refuse to fold on one another, no matter how bad the hand.
Give me the best ones, Charlie.
A few years ago, Charlie was diagnosed with a kind of Alzheimer's.
We were playing cards, and he just blurted it out.
Today, the guys take turns sitting out.
Let's see what you got here.
So Charlie can still sit in.
No.
They pretty much have to play his hand for him, but no one seems to mind.
Let's see what you got, Charlie.
In fact, quite the opposite.
Good play. Good job, Chuck. 2 or 3 times during the game, he would smile or he would laugh or that light would return to his eyes, and that was great to see. We want him with us as long as he can come. He's part of the group. Well,
No one knows for sure when it happened, but at some point over the last 50-odd years of stale jokes and non-stop ribbing,
read my lips.
Real compassion came to this card table.
Oops.
Which is why, no matter what life deals these guys,
I'll call you.
Happiness will always be in their cards.
Take care of yourself. Yeah, okay.
They play this game for money. Started out with a nickel, now they play for a quarter, but I guess over all these years, pretty much everybody's even.
That's such a wonderful story. Not many people can claim friendships that long-lasting, right?
Yeah. Do you know anybody 50 years?
My parents. Yeah, that's about it.
I know.
Anyway, tell me what our choices are for next week.
Okay, 3 choices. First, I could check out the first ever National Vocabulary Championships. The rules are simple. Whippersnapper with the most consummate lexicon preponderates.
Or how about the police chief who gave a ticket to himself? Fined himself $235 for not stopping for a school bus. Is anyone that honest? Or is hell just frozen over? Or finally, a story suggestion from Kathleen Albin of Cottage Grove, Oregon, who saw a story in her local paper about a blind mechanic who fixes cars by feel. So those are your three choices. To vote or suggest a story of your own, go to cbsnews.com and click on Assignment America. You can also vote by sending a text message from your cell phone. Just send a text to 81818 and put either the number 1, 2, or 3 in the message line to indicate which story you want me to cover. Story with the most votes plays right here next Friday night.
Tonight's Assignment America segment is sponsored by ExxonMobil, taking on the world's toughest energy challenges.
Global warming is a hot topic lately, and next week we'll show you some cool solutions in a special series. And that's the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching this week. I'll see you on Monday. Good night.